Hello, class. Welcome to our reading review of the poems in Reading and Writing About Literature, pages 64 to 65 and 105 to 111. The first poem, My Last Duchess, by Robert Browning on page 64. Again, as I said, when you're thinking about explicating a poem, there's a couple things to consider. First, the title, then consider the first lines and the last lines, just like you would when analyzing a story, uh, or for that matter, a song, right? A movie, in some ways, a play, right? The first lines of Hamlet, who's there? And the whole play is all about identity. First lines of the story of an hour. Knowing that Mrs. Mallard was afflicted with heart trouble, great care was taken when breaking the news that her husband died. Right? Is the trouble symbolic? Is it literal? Is she having love trouble, relationship trouble, or is it her mechanical heart that she's having trouble with? So my last Duchess suggests the one previous. Does he currently have a Duchess? Or is it my last, meaning there will be no more Duchesses? That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. We learn a lot from that. So the poem is essentially about his last Duchess, who is no longer alive. Um, and as you read through it, there's a lot of details that help develop the point the poem seems to be making about the last Duchess. Looking at the conclusion, right? Um, Notice Neptune, though taming a seahorse, thought a rarity which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Um, what is the sculpture cast in bronze? How do you feel the allusion to Neptune, the god of the sea, and he's taming a seahorse, which is thought a rarity, something special? Again, there's a lot being said here, and that's just the title, the first lines, and the last lines. So as you're explicating your poems and thinking about breaking them down for this essay, I would consider those ideas. As we're moving forward, right, to the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock on page 106. Well, actually, before we get to that, let's start with 105, Shakespeare's Sonnet 116. Now, what's interesting about his sonnets, they don't have a title per se, they're numbered. Usually, they're referred to by the first line. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Right? He's saying what he's not going to do. He starts with that counter argument, immediately kind of starts by engaging in the dialectic. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds. So we know it's about love, and he's writing about what love is, and he's not going to admit anything that what he's saying, impediments, right? Things that hold him back. The speaker seems very, very sure of what love is, and obviously the issue this poem is focusing on is love. So now the question is, what is the point that Sonnet 116 makes about love? Look at the last four lines. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. So love doesn't disappear, especially if there's negativity or doom, right? It's going to last forever, is essentially what it seems like the point is. If this be error and upon me proved, right? If you can prove me wrong, then I never wrote, nor no man ever loved. Then my definition of love is wrong, and nobody's ever had love. And by the way, I've never written anything. Again, Monsieur Shakespeare was famous in his day. He was kind of a rock star in England at the time. Because remember, people went to the theater to be entertained, and the actors were the entertainers, and the playwrights were the authors, and he was both. So it's a pretty interesting claim the speaker is making at the end of Sonnet 116. And as you can see, there's sample student annotations uh, for the poem as well. Now, moving on to the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. This is a very long poem. And again, when you're choosing a poem to explicate for this paper, keep in mind that the longer the poem, the more explicating you're going to have to do. So I suggest that students choose a poem that they feel comfortable explicating and one that you could do a really close reading at. Uh, it doesn't necessarily have to be line by line, but it's pretty close to line by line, at least stanza by stanza. So right off the bat, it's a love song. So what do you make of that? Um, Obviously, it's a specific love song, and then there's the preface with a quote from Dante's Inferno, and then notice the sample student annotations. Why start a love song with a reference to ideas about hell? Very, very interesting. So before we even get into the first words of the poem, after the title, we've got this allusion, and allusions are references, and they conjure up images or ideas that one wants to emphasize. So that's a very interesting allusion to start with. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half deserted streets, the muttering retreats. And it continues. This refrain of let us go opening up, the speaker is inviting you as the listener to be part of this journey. Is it a literal journey? Is it a metaphorical journey? Is it a symbolic journey? As we get to the conclusion, I'm sure you noticed the reference to Prince Hamlet, page 109, right around line 111 of the poem. As we get towards the as we move towards the conclusion on page 110, let's kind of look at the last stanza. We have lingered in the chambers of the sea by sea girls wreathed with seaweed red and brown till human voices wake us and we drown. An interesting way to end the poem. And it's a very complex poem. And I think that the book does us all a favor annotating it so that when you read it, you can get an idea of the references, the details, the examples within the poem. So, again, choose your poems wisely. As I've said before, Google top 50 poems. They're listed in order of the top 50, but also on that website, you can click poems by subject, poems by author, poems by country of origin or nationality of the author. And when you click on poems by subject or theme, they really have a lot for you to choose from. So hopefully you find that a helpful website. Remember, for each of the websites I suggested, there's biographical sources on your authors. You can get secondary sources on your author, on your poem, on your issue or themes, um, or all of the above. So hopefully you're feeling confident moving forward with this essay and explicating the poem, getting your secondary sources, putting it all together. If you have any questions, as always, let me know. Thank you for your patience, and until next time.